Reading and writing are skills that most of us take for granted. We understand road signs without thinking twice. We fill out forms almost automatically. But for some people, these everyday situations are daunting, and while they're willing to talk about the problem, want to keep their identity concealed.
Yeah, you make excuses for yourself and to cover the fact that you can't read and to make yourself as normal as other people.
Others live in constant dread.
You know, if you was handed a pen, it was like somebody handing you a death adder.
The problem is adult illiteracy. It affects 1 in 10 Australians. In the Hunter, community awareness is steadily increasing, and more people are coming forward to seek help.
With industry retraining and restructuring, which is happening everywhere in Newcastle at the moment, people realise that they are going to have to do extra study, that they're going to have to improve and increase their skills, and to be able to do that, they're going to have to read and write. So they also realise that it's about time they make the move.
This weekend, illiteracy will be the subject of a statewide conference to be held at the Newcastle University campus. Delegates from the New South Wales Adult Literacy Council will meet to provide information and guidance for teachers in adult education programs. They hope to improve the level of awareness of the problem and the quality of literacy training in the Hunter and throughout the state.
At the end of the month, these 79 girls leave Australia for a 3-week tour of the US and Great Britain. The ultimate destination is the Llangollen Eisteddfod in Wales, an international event where choirs compete by invitation only. The Waratah Girls Choir will be the only Australian entry and one of only a handful of local choirs to ever compete there.
Well, it's going to be special for us because it's the biggest one that we've ever gone in, being an international one, and I think it's probably almost the Olympic Games of Eisteddfods in the world, I think.
The girls, who are aged between 8 and 24 years, are drawn from Newcastle, Lake Macquarie and the Lower Hunter region. As well as countless public appearances, the girls and their families have been busy raising the $150,000 needed to fund the trip. That target has now been reached, and all without one raffle being held.
Yes, we've done a whole lot of things. I think the biggest thing was doing Lemingtons, and once a month we'd all get together and make Lemingtons and that sort of thing, and car washes once a month.
While in Wales, the girls will be billeted by an entire Welsh village. To repay the courtesy and hospitality, they'll literally sing for their supper each night.
So I think it'll be frightening as well, though. No one, I don't think, has been billeted here before.
Never before in a foreign country?
No, never.
It was cutthroat stuff at Nelson Bay today as lawn bowls adapted the scoring format of a tennis tiebreaker. It was the first to 7 shots to win a set, each game the best of 3. With the field comprising the cream of the state's north, it wasn't the place for the faint-hearted. So Hexham's Neville Monk was understandably worried.
I've got to go to Sydney tomorrow for a triple bypass, and it's been worrying me, you know. Instead of settling down to play bowls, it's been a bit on my mind, you know.
A few sleepless nights?
Oh, a few sleepless nights. Restless ones.
But with $500 and a spot in the state final up for grabs in each section, no one was giving any quarter. Neville bowed out to Waratah's Doug Howard, who survived this sudden death clash with John O'Neill to claim the money. Section 2 was won by Charlestown's Terry Webster, who dropped this set to Lismore's Terry Maguire, but did enough in his last game to win. A surprise elimination was Commonwealth Games representative Barry Salter, who had a tournament he'd rather forget. In the third section, South Australian transplant Andrew Smith was just far too good, and he'll fly the Cahaiba colours at the state final in 6 weeks' time.
For most of these Year 9 Katara High School students, this is their first face-to-face encounter with the law. The police youth officers want that encounter to establish a lasting mutual respect rather than waiting for a run-in that leads to a lifetime of suspicion. The students were encouraged to ask frank questions.
On the radio this morning they said something how Newcastle was one of the most popular places for drink driving, and that there's going to be more like undercover cops and cars around. What do you think of that?
And police were equally candid in their answers. If day one was anything to go by, the teenagers and the police will cover plenty of ground by Friday. Although the morning was spent on deeper questions of peer group pressure and personal values, the seminar isn't all talk. The afternoon was a hands-on encounter. It's the first time police have tried this approach in the Hunter since the scheme was proposed last year, and only the third time it's been tried in the state.
We hope to show the kids that we are quite approachable and have a good time with them and make them aware of the costs of crime and vandalism on the community. They're in that midway age group where they haven't got any really hardened attitudes yet. We feel we can still work with them, but they're not too young either to not be responsible for their actions.
Already police believe they've changed some attitudes. They may even have won a few recruits along the way.
The men were last seen clinging to 2 life rafts as darkness fell on Friday night. Since then, one of the rafts has been recovered, but the 4 sailors remain lost. On Monday, the Federal Sea Safety Centre was ready to give up.
The chances of finding anybody alive in reality are so slim that they are effectively near nil.
But the families of the men aren't prepared to take that for an answer. Appearing on the midday show today, they spoke of their conviction that the men are still alive.
They were all in life jackets, and there is no way, I know my husband and I know my son, that those boys would have had those jackets off. Now, there's no sighting of jackets, and it's costing me a lot to say this, but there are no bodies have been found. There is no trace of this other life raft at this.
The families have spent some $52,000 chartering private planes to continue the search, but now the money is running out.
We're realistic people. We're emotional at home. We're trying not to be here, but we're realistic, and we find that we know the logistics of the matter of finance, and it must cease somewhere. But
they're now making a last-ditch effort to contact Dick Smith, whose long-range helicopter would be ideal for the operation. He's currently in far northwest Queensland and can only be contacted through the Flying Doctor Service. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
It was just before closing time when the offender struck at Rogers Diamond Emporium in Hunter Street West. He'd been in the store earlier in the day on the pretext of shopping for a diamond engagement ring. He'd made his selection and the shop assistant was arranging the lay-by papers when the offender jumped the counter, grabbed the pad and ran from the store. 10 rings similar to these were stolen. No weapon was produced. Police have a good description of the offender.
A male described as aged about 25 to 30 years old, about 183 centimetres tall, of medium to solid build, with dark, wavy collar-length hair.
The owner of the store, Alison Rogers, and his assistant gave police details of the stolen stock. They also told detectives that the man appeared agitated. The loss will have to be worn by the store. The rings were not insured. John Church, NBN News.
News of the council's Clearway proposal sent waves of panic and anger through Derby Street's business community yesterday. According to them, news that council was to investigate parking restrictions to open up 4 lanes of traffic would cripple the passing trade they rely so heavily upon to survive.
But if you take the park out, where are people going to go?
I think I'd most probably have to consider closing.
But suddenly for the traders, support from a quite unexpected quarter today in Lord Mayor Alderman John McNaughton. He said he wouldn't stand by the proposal because the damage to Derby Street's reputation would be irreversible.
People park there unwittingly. They get caught up at a meeting or overlook it and don't read the sign and they get booked. That's one issue, and that's what drives them away from that shopping centre in droves. They never come back. It's what happened in King Street. The second one is that person, and there's every afternoon someone will do that, and that means the whole clearway is useless. You've still got to get back to one lane. So they're futile things. There must be a better way of solving the problem.
Well, Lord Mayor, if it doesn't have your support, how did the proposal come about in the first place?
Oh, these things regularly come through, and just because it doesn't have my support doesn't mean that it won't be agreed to. I have a view, and I make that view known.
So you think the city can survive at this stage as it is without this clearway?
Oh, absolutely. The clearway is not going to have any bearing on whether the city survives or not. It might make it a little bit more comfortable for people to get to work and home from work, but so what? It takes an extra 10 minutes to get home.
And the support from the top didn't stop there. Newcastle Chamber of Commerce President David Lamarchant too admitted he was extremely doubtful the plan could ever be a success.
Derby Street's flavour is one of restaurants, is one of commercial life. It's a special street, I think, in most people's opinion. Therefore, we would be seeking to maintain that flavour because it is an attraction. And we would be certainly throwing our full weight behind any move that we thought was detrimental to the commercial livelihood of Derby Street.
But having that sort of support doesn't guarantee an instant victory for the traders. Council's Traffic Committee is still to conduct traffic counts and observations and take submissions in the coming weeks before reporting back to its July meeting. And in that time, retailers like Emilio Falcon say they'll be making their feelings very clear.
I'll be fighting for my business. I think everybody in Derby Street will be fighting for that, don't they?
Traffic was heavy on the Maitland Road that Friday, May 25th, when 20-year-old Tracy first saw the van slow down beside her, then drive away. The van didn't go far. The driver went around the block, then drove towards Tracy again. This time the vehicle didn't pass. After a brief conversation, the young woman accepted a lift. The pair drove west along the Maitland Road. Tracy recalled that the rear compartment of the van was bare except for curtains over the side windows. The pair continued west until the driver pulled into a car park near the Tyres Hill TAFE College. Later, as the van left the car park, Tracy attempted to leave the vehicle. As she was stepping out of the door, the driver grabbed her handbag containing money and credit cards. During a struggle, the van continued to accelerate. Eventually, Tracy was flung from the vehicle, a rear wheel passing over her ankle, causing painful injuries. Police have a good description of the driver. They're convinced he's a local man.
We think so. Tracy's supplied us quite a detailed description of the van. It has side windows with curtains and the rear of the van is completely empty. We believe that the description of the fellow that she gave us and the van narrows it down quite a bit.
The man is between 22 to 25 years of age. He's tall with sandy-coloured shoulder-length straight hair. It's flicked back at the front. He was clean-shaven with a medium to fair complexion. The van is light yellow or fawn, possibly a Ford or Mitsubishi L300. If you recognise this man, call police now on 008 251 009. There's a reward of up to $1,000 for information leading to an arrest. The number again is 008 251 009.
The The $100,000 Beechcraft Bonanza went down in wetlands just north of Madawi on Tuesday morning with 5 people on board. Miraculously, all escaped injury. Bureau of Air Safety investigators were quickly on the scene in a bid to determine the cause of the crash. But with the plane left stranded in a swampy grave, their inspection had to be put on hold until it could be lifted out. Early this morning, a 3-man crew from Lloyd's Search and Rescue was called in to do just that. With the aid of a powerful helicopter capable of lifting as much as 1,500 kilograms, the plan was to attach nylon slings around the plane and then lift it straight out. Unfortunately, the waterlogged craft refused to cooperate. Normally weighing around 1,100 kilograms, it had taken on a further 600 kilograms of water, virtually anchoring it to the ground. After one brief attempt at lifting the plane, which resulted in it being raised only a few centimetres, the Lloyd's crew abandoned the attempt, saying further bids could possibly severely damage the chopper. It's now likely teams will return to the plane tomorrow to remove the engine and all the interior fittings before another airlift is made on Sunday. Once removed, the Beechcraft will be taken to the nearby RAAF bombing range where air safety experts will thoroughly examine it. A decision will then be made on whether the plane is worth restoring.
One such seminar was held today at the Brackish Water Fish Culture Research Centre at Salamander Bay. It was an overflow crowd of oyster growers from all over who know that these are not happy days in their industry and are determined to try and fix things up. They know pollution has given their industry a credibility problem, along the lines growers in Florida suffered 5 to 10 years ago.
I think they're trying to draw upon some of our experiences, both positive and negative.
A great deal of Professor Roderick's address was devoted to one particular type of bacteria, Vibrio vulnificus, now known widely in saltwater environments and found in Sydney rock oysters in 1989. It's of particular concern because it's a bigger killer than any other contaminant.
The Vibrio vulnificus cases have just recently been reported in the past several years, I guess, in Australia. And I think the biggest message I'm going to try to get to these people is the value of education at various levels. The medical community, the oyster industry itself, the processors, the food handlers.
In particular, Professor Roderick pointed out that there are growing categories of people who should avoid oysters. Those with liver problems, the elderly with low gastric acid production, cancer patients on immunosuppressant drugs, and people with AIDS.
That's one of your risk groups, though, that shouldn't eat raw oysters because they're immunosuppressed, and we now have cases of Vibrio vulnificus in AIDS patients in the United States. So we have a very active educational program with AIDS patients at the moment.
At 31 years of age, Sammy Iniotis is still matching it with the best and has held the enviable title of Mr Universe on no less than 3 occasions. Never defeated in junior ranks, it's time for the pocket dynamo from Melbourne to turn professional, and he doesn't feel overawed by the prospect.
For the past few years I've always competed as an amateur, and I've always been successful as an amateur. I've won the Universe once, I've come runner-up in it twice, and I've come runner-up in the world twice, and I've only competed internationally 7 times. I've won 2 junior Universe including, so really out of 7 shows, placing no lower than 2nd place is great. So the difference between me going from amateur to professional isn't that much.
Around 50 competitors will be at the Belmont 16-foot Sailing Club from 10 in the morning to try and wrest the titles of Northern New South Wales champions for men and women. For Sammy, his guest posing will come with a message.
Hopefully try to show the people what a bodybuilder should look like most of the year, because to me this is my off-season shape. If you're going to do weight training, you've got to make sure you look like a bodybuilder rather than do your weight training and get out there and start eating meat pies and hot dogs. And so you've got to make sure you look after your health physically, mentally, the whole lot.
A lone attendant at the Merewether Shell service station on City Road was confronted by a man dressed in a black raincoat and tracksuit pants. He threatened the attendant with a long-bladed serrated-edged knife before making off with a small amount of money from the cash register. Police were quickly on the scene and followed a lead from a taxi driver who said a man fitting the robber's description hailed a cab from Merewether to the Albion Hotel in Wickham. Police questioned people at the hotel, but no arrests were made. Investigations are continuing.
In the world of motorcycles, this is the Rolls-Royce of the road. The basic model starts at around $15,000, pushing up to $18,000 for the top of the range. There are only 700 members of the Harley Owners Group in Australia. In America, there are more than 100,000. The bikes can top speeds of 180 kilometres per hour, but for the Harley devotee, this bike is designed for cruising.
It's just like riding an armchair down the highway. Very comfortable.
The bikers say it's every young man's dream to ride a Harley. With the right gear and the inclination, those dreams can come true. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Futuristic moves like this have taken Mark Sainsbury to some dizzy heights in the surfing world, but a dose of good old-fashioned loyalty could send him crashing. The former world amateur champion has turned his back on a swag of American dollars to repay the faith shown in him by Central Coast board builder Bill Cillier.
Nirvana surfboards have been with me for, 12 years, maybe 13 years now, and basically they've been the ones who stood behind me from start to finish, and when the times have got tough, they've been there, mainly Bill Cillier. He's the man behind the whole show, and that's where my loyalties lie, that's it.
Since being dumped by his major sponsor almost 2 years ago, Sainsbury has attacked the world circuit on a starvation budget. If he doesn't win, he doesn't eat.
At one stage I got down to that, but that was the first event of the European tour, and I was on sausage rolls for the start of it, but by the end of that month I was well and truly high-flying and out in the restaurants and fully fed and doing well.
He's decided to shelve the chase for sponsors in order to concentrate on what he does best, surfing. Despite the financial woes, he's more confident than ever before of finally fulfilling his awesome potential.
Basically, my surfboards are fine, so everything's great. You know, I'm feeling good. My training's been good leading up to this next lot of competitions, and I'm looking forward to going away.
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
There's an enormous amount of reading there, and Paul Getty says that the rather free.
And the situation would be the same, and 9 would be the same.
Since the official search was called off last Monday, the families of the 4 men have remained adamant the men are alive and have funded their own private search to find them. But with limited resources and the days passing, the family says their only hope rests with the government. Today they presented new evidence to the Air Force which they hope will convince them to resume the search. Although they didn't get the answer they so desperately wanted, the Air Force did say it would reconsider its decision but would give no promises.